you came back.
Yes.
What do you attribute to this happening? You know, I asked you earlier about, was it because you described that it was so cold and icy that the wind had ripped the newspapers and that your clothes were frozen stiff? And so I was thinking that it was because you'd gotten so cold, and I've heard people talk about freezing to death where there's this warm feeling that comes over you.
Yeah.
And yeah. But
No,
you're saying it
wasn't-
wasn't near death. You're saying it wasn't that.
It wasn't near death. And
So what do you attribute this feeling to?
I think some kind of a karmic spiritual destiny, because other profound states came on uncalled for, not in stressful situations, in fact, in non-stressful situations that were as extreme, in fact, even more extreme, finally to the degree that I really left my life in the East, which was a very successful life, and moved out to the country where I could spend some years meditating and getting used to this altered, different state of consciousness.
I'm talking to Dr. David Hawkins about his book, Power versus Force, and he was just explaining to us, those of you who are just joining us here on XM 156, the experience he had as a young boy. I don't know, would you call it out of body or really in inner body experience?
It wasn't out of body, because I later had out of body experiences. They're quite different. No, this was an altered suffusion in which the small self disappeared into the large self, and the sense of personal self disappeared, and that happened even more so later in life. The prior sense of a personal self has never returned. Right now, I'm the witness of what is being said, but I'm not the author of it.
So is the larger self the soul?
Classically, the small self is the ego self,
right,
with a narcissistic core, and the large self is the spirit, the soul. Soul, yes. Yeah? And so it's like periodically in my life, the personal self would dissolve right into the infinite power of the spiritual self, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you never discussed that experience with anybody as a boy because you say there was no context in which to even talk about it. But after this experience, though, I understand from what I'm reading in Power versus Force, after this experience, this altered state experience that you had in the snow, after this blissful state, you describe in the book that you had gone to the depths of hell and then experienced a level of consciousness also indescribable in its bliss. You felt the presence of God, or what you called at the time in the book, the presence, this loving presence. I remember you saying that you were in love with everyone.
Oh, yes. I still am.
Okay.
Well, years, it took me years to learn how to handle it, because to even interact with anybody who's loving, I would break out in tears. And
really?
This is common in certain spiritual groups. There's a period you go through where anything beautiful and love makes you cry. I mean, just speaking to you, because your energy is so loving. And I could feel that same tearfulness beginning to emerge, I would.
Oh, thank you.
I would look at
thank you for saying
in an
that.
airport. One would look at the other. You could see the tender love, and I would cry.
Well, I know. I remember reading in Power versus Force the line where you said, "As I looked at each person, myself shone forth from their eyes," and I wondered, how did I get into all these bodies?
One self, one God. Divinity is described as transcendent. That's out there elsewhere in time and place. God is immanent. In other words, the very core and source of one's existence and beingness is life, and God is the core of life, and life as we know it is the manifestation of divinity.
Well,
So
knowing
while
what you know, does it frustrate you that wars are still being fought in the name of religion and people fighting over who they claim God to be and what they claim God to be? Is that frustrating to you?
No, because I see the nature of human consciousness and the purpose of our life here. This is the world of maximum opportunity, the maximum gain of positive karma and undoing of negative karma. That's old-fashioned terminology, let's say, coming from Buddhism. But to undo the negative and to achieve the positive. So this is the world.
That's what this world is for, as you see it?
Yes, this world, by many years of research, and we demonstrate this very often at lectures, is perfect as it is. If its purpose, then, is the evolution of your soul, then it's perfect. Because how could you perfect your soul if you couldn't get a chance to say no to evil and say yes to good and goodness and love.
One of the things that I love that you say is, for it's only the illusion of individuality that is the origin of all suffering. When one realizes that one is the universe, complete and at one with all that is, forever without end, then no further suffering is possible. Well, the question is, how do we all begin to realize that? You know, in recent weeks we've just been talking about people just trying to understand that they have some control over their realities by the way they think about their lives and how.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
you believe that, right?
Well, you can't transcend the world till you master it. You finally, first you master the world, and then you let go your attachments to it. You let go of desires and aversions.
One of my goals here on earth is to be, my prayer for myself is to live the highest level of consciousness possible for me, incarnated in this body with this ego in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is my constant, and I've had that prayer for about 20 years, and I can feel myself getting closer, you know, just in my appreciation of the simplest things, finding in the midst of, you know, yes, chaos and craziness and stuff, I can just still myself, that my experience is completely different than the experience that other people are having around me. So that means I'm getting closer, right?
You're striving for unconditional love. And
yes,
of course, it's that love you radiate out to the world. And that's why the world loves you.
Well, you say that in Power versus Force, you say that the commonplace and God are not distinct. That to live with care and kindness is all that is necessary. The rest reveals itself in due time.
Willing to be loving towards all of life and all of its expressions transforms everybody, not only your own life, but everyone around you. And it's an interesting experiment is when you go to a store or you buy a newspaper, whatever you do, you just smile lovingly at the person and see how beautiful they are as a person, and say thank you. Well, when you say thank you to clerks like that, a lot of them will drop their teeth. They just look at you like, huh? I mean, nobody sends them love and tells them thank you with intense gratitude, really. And they look at you with shock and surprise.
Yeah.
So you can see that it's not what you do in the world, it's what you have become. So what you have become begins to influence all of life around you. And people look forward to if you're a regular customer there, that newsstand, that guy will start to light up the minute he sees you coming down the street. It's just an amazing transformative effect that we have on others. So I encourage people to strive on this earthly plane for unconditional lovingness, unconditional love, everyone at all times.
Specifically, you say people wonder, how does one reach the state of awareness that you spoke of, long extended states of bliss that you had where you weren't even able to function in the real world sometimes.
That's right.
And I was like, as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, I want some of that, whatever that is. I want some long extended states of bliss. That's what I would like.
You get blissed out. Well, if you do spiritual work continuously, don't forget I did it continuously, nonstop, constantly surrendering everything to God and letting go, wanting to change it, to either avoid it or to desire to crave it or to resist it. So eventually what happens is rather profound spiritual states. You read about them in the book, that's one thing. But they begin to spontaneously occur, and they can pretty much take you out of the world. The infinite peace. It's beyond joy and ecstasy. I was into joy. I was into ecstasy. And everything has to be surrendered to God.
That's a drug also, so you have to clarify. You were into ecstasy in the purest sense, not the drug.
Yeah, it was an emotion of a joy.
Because you've never taken drugs? Have you never taken drugs?
No, that had nothing to do with that.
Okay, because some of the things you described sounded like a drug trip. I was thinking, well, I wonder what that was he was on.
Well,
but
that's
nothing.
Why now you've got the secret of why drugs are happy. Hardly anybody knows